Welcome. This is Remnants Podcast, and we are your hosts. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Emily.
This is going to be a podcast about haunted places and their history and our thoughts on that place. Sometimes we will do our own paranormal investigations as well. I don't know why, but sometimes I do weird accents. I think it might be my past lives coming out.
That or the wine that we are currently drinking.
Yes.
It could be a combination of past life and alcohol. Probably.
And my weirdness.
That's the main thing, but I was trying to be nice.
We've been thinking and workshopping about this podcast for months. And so yes. I think we're just so excited and ready to be sitting down today and recording and getting our thoughts out there.
Yeah, and we definitely have a lot of thoughts because I thought I had a lot with 2 pages of notes, and then Kayla comes over and she has 17. And then I find out that she has a short history and a long history, which is, I don't know if a difference of 1 page and 3, but I under-prepared apparently. So
that's what you're in for.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So I know you were a really creepy kid.
Yes, I was.
Because I can't forget you mentioning that you collected pictures of dead people.
No, that's not it. So I used to find, I watched something on the History Channel about how, I don't remember if it was in the late 1800s or the early 1900s, but when children passed away, parents would have them photographed so they would remember them, but you could always tell by their eyes that the children weren't alive. And so, my mom and I were big in going to antique stores, and so, and it's so sad because there's just always a ton of boxes of pictures, from, I guess, I don't know, families that just don't want them or the family dies out. Anyways, there's a lot of old pictures in antique stores, and so as a kid, I would just go through them and try to see if I could find dead children pictures. That sounds so horrible.
So I like that I said dead people and you're like, no, that's not it. It was dead kids.
Yes, it was. But it's a historical fact that it's something in America that our culture did.
That's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
See, I thought I was weird, but I just liked to watch, I don't know, whatever the popular ghost thing was when we were kids. I don't even know, but I liked all the ghost shit. And, I thought I liked it until I went to actually go to it, because I used to live near the Queen Mary in California, and I thought it was really cool, and I knew all the stories. And then I went there, and I had to be escorted off the ship because I was so scared. But I was also 8, so I don't know. It's legit, but I mean, I think maybe I'll talk.
I don't know if
I don't know. When we went to the Sallie House, I was pretty scared. But, I mean, we stayed.
We did. We stayed the full hour.
Yeah, which I guess that's what this episode is about, is the Sallie House in Atchison.
Yes. Which Atchison is... So we're based in Kansas City, Missouri. Mm-hmm. There is a Kansas City, Kansas as well, but as a separate city. Kansas City, Missouri came first, and then the state of Kansas came and had to just, confuse everyone. But... Kansas City, Missouri.
The point of the story is it's Kansas's fault.
It is. Where was I going? I just get so... anyways. I just get very...
This is part of the 3-page history. We're going back to the bullet points.
But anyway, okay, so our focus of our podcast, because we are based in Kansas City, we're going to talk about mostly... places in this area. And the Sallie House is in Atchison, Kansas, which is just, 30, 40 miles north of Kansas City. And right along the border. I mean, it's right there along the river and along the border of Missouri and Kansas. So, though Atchison is in Kansas, it's, right there.
Yeah, it's acceptable.
It's acceptable, yeah.
I feel so lucky to be so close to something so horrible. Not Kansas, the Demon House.
Yeah, it's the most... I don't know, it's pretty famous in at least the paranormal community, and it probably is why a lot of people have even heard of Atchison. Mm-hmm. Atchison is the birthplace of Amelia Earhart, so they probably rather that be their claim to fame.
I don't know. I think the demon is more interesting, personally, or not the demon, who knows? Yeah. For sure. But yeah, I've known about the Sallie House for a while, like I said, just being so interested in paranormal stuff as long as I have been. Do you have any, what got you started being interested in dead kids and all of that?
I really don't know. As long as I can remember, I've always loved the paranormal and ghost like you said, ghost shows. I know I specifically, which I'm going to date myself as a 90s kid here, but used to record on tape episodes of Scariest Places on Earth, which I think
love that show.
Linda Blair hosted. I'm pretty
Is that
sure.
the lady from The Exorcist?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I used to record these, and then there was this one episode in particular that had this house. I should find this episode, but it has this house in southern Missouri that had like crazy poltergeist activity, and I thought it was so cool, and I would like take it to sleepovers and show my friends. They either, I was never bullied for it, so they either found it interesting or were just really nice to me.
You still have friends.
Yeah. But
You did make me watch paranormal shows when I went to your house. It hasn't changed.
Well, I used to, and when I lived in LA, I would host Ghost Adventures watch parties with my roommate. We had a lot. We had some really fun parties where we would just watch Ghost Adventures.
You can get some solid entertainment out of that. I don't know if it's necessarily scary, but the Sallie House episode of that show is very good.
It's very entertaining.
Yes. I know mine. I had a personal experience when I was, I don't know, like, I feel like my default age when I talk about childhood is 8. I don't think I was 8 for this as well, but we're going to say 8. After my grandmother passed away, we got a bunch of her furniture, and we kind of assimilated it into our house. So we just had, we had a bunch of my deceased grandmother's furniture in our house, and I remember I was walking out of the bathroom after taking a shower, and I thought I saw my mom sitting in dead grandma's chair watching TV, like with her arm raised, like she's changing the channel, and she's wearing this old nightgown that apparently was also my grandma's, because why not? That's not weird. And then, I'm walking forward asking my mom what she's watching, because I guess I'm nosy, and she didn't answer me, so I asked again, and then from behind me, my actual mom asked me who I was talking to. So I turn around, and there's my mom with laundry. Turn back around, there's an empty armchair with nobody in a nightgown. And I know for a fact it actually happened, because I did talk to my mom afterwards, and she still remembers the whole conversation. And she didn't send me anywhere, so she must not have thought I was crazy. But I think I saw my grandmother, and that's the only, very specific thing I've had happen. I've seen a couple things. Yeah, I've seen a couple things that I feel like I could write off as maybe being half asleep or something, but that I was legitimately awake. And it's enough for me to be like, well...
Yeah, witness, your mom.
Yeah, saw me talking to nothing. So either I need medication or I saw a ghost. That is why I still think there might be something, even if I go... if we go to... When we went to the Sallie House, I both really wanted and didn't want anything to happen.
Yes.
And I didn't, expect anything to happen, but I was really hopeful at the same time. And I have that experience to kind of make me think that it's possible, even if it seems really unlikely, if that makes sense. And that's about it for me. I've just always liked creepy stuff and horror movies and all of that, so it kind of all just ties together.
And see, I'm not big on the horror movies, but I love... the ghost shows. And I don't know, maybe it's the history aspect of it that's so interesting.
Wait, you like history? What?
Oh, I know.
What did you study?
I did. So I almost was a history major, but that I ended up being... I double majored in journalism and classics with a focus on Latin and Roman history and literature. So I took 8 years of Latin. So, if we start to get into demons and Catholicism and exorcism, maybe I brush off that Latin.
Yeah, so she is our best bet for a future exorcism, and that makes me feel much more comfortable, really.
Yes.
Just brush up quickly.
I know.
I think we might need one soon.
Journalism was my focus, but I just loved the Roman history so much that I chose to double major, because apparently I'm an overachiever with my 17 pages of notes for this episode, so.
Yeah, maybe a little bit, but it's a good thing.
Yeah.
At least you didn't write your notes in Latin.
I don't think I could do that anymore. They should probably, take my degree back.
No. We'll do that if we get to, a 60th or something, or some relevant number. I don't know why 60, but some number. You have to write, a paragraph of your notes in Latin just to...
That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Romans believed in ghosts. They had ghost stories. I can't think of the word for ghosts, but I remember, in, Latin 1 and 2 classes, we would translate, stories, and they'd be like, he saw a ghost.
So I need to have, a Roman translated spooky like campfire ghost story
Yes,
segment now.
that would be really fun.
I will contribute nothing. I will listen, and I will say, ooh.
So that's my my educational background. Hopefully my journalism skills will come out with this podcast or not.
We'll see. I studied marketing, so can't help, really. I mean,
With our powers combined.
we will do something, good or bad.
Yeah. I guess I have a ghost story too.
Okay.
I have photographic evidence that there was a ghost in the house I grew up in high school and college. Maybe we'll have to post it someday.
Yeah,
but
we should definitely post that.
it's a weird feeling because my family didn't believe me because the activity seemed to just specifically be in my bedroom.
Because you were so creepy.
Probably. They're like, it's just creepy Kayla with her nonsense.
Creepy Kayla.
With her nonsense ghost stories.
Creepy with a K.
But I'm very obsessed about closing all my doors at night when I go to bed and I sleep in a pitch black room. Like, so I just, that's always been, since I was little, all the doors have to be closed. And I would wake up to my closet door being open. And I'm like, I know it was closed because I could not have gone to bed with it open. And there was a couple times I would wake up to and my faucet would be running in my bathroom. And yeah, I told my parents and they didn't believe me until I went to college. And then sometimes my mom would sleep down in my room because of my dad snoring. I think that happens pretty often in households.
She was a ghost over snoring.
And the same stuff started happening to my mom, and I was finally
got your validation.
I did get my validation. And then the activity started happening in the family room that was in between my brother and I's room downstairs. Like, my dad was watching TV and he said he felt someone grip his arm and he turned around and no one was there. My mom was like sleeping on my bed and she thought it was like my brother coming home to wake her up because she felt the like bed lower.
Yeah.
And when she like sat up thinking it was my brother, no one was there, but she could see like that the bed was like indented.
That's really
So that
creepy.
actually was more creepy than me just waking up to closet doors being open.
Yeah, it's like they're trying harder to get their attention because they didn't believe.
Yeah.
You were just like an easy, just like, oh no.
I was
she
like
knows.
a 14,
she knows
15,
we're here.
16-year-old, like,
we don't have to show off.
someone's turning on my faucet.
You just had like a really hygienic ghost who just always needed to wash their hands. Why is it just passing through?
Right. So, and then in college, one of my roommates came home with me and she took pictures in our basement and she got a picture of this fog in the leather chair in our family room. And she had one of those like DSR, like nice big cameras, and she was taking like a bunch of photos at once, and it's just one picture out of the series that has
unsettling.
the fog. So
maybe ghosts just really like chairs.
I
Maybe
mean,
that's
they get
what we
tired
learned.
too.
Their ghost legs, all the floating. It's tiring. Didn't you say that your family house has basically like a museum in it?
Yes, and that's what we think, because like that house was a new build, and before it was just forest land, so like there's no history there of someone dying in the home. But my dad does collect World War II stuff, and so and that was, so my bedroom was in the basement, and my dad had all that stored in the storage room that was directly behind my the wall.
Which is
shared.
really cool.
So we think that's why it was like centered in my room and the family room, because the wall on the other side was where he stored his World War II stuff. So we think it might have just been some residual energy from a uniform, or
You've just like got an entire battalion in your house and you just like they're everywhere.
But there doesn't seem to be any activity in my parents' current home. I don't know.
Maybe they just like that one. They
Yeah.
didn't want to leave.
It was interesting when that house was being built. The builder like joked that my parents were building on an Indian burial ground because he had 17 injuries while that house was being built, and he's like, I've never had so many injuries on a house before. But
Oh, that would freak me out so much. And be like, actually, we're moving. You're gonna have to pick up all your progress and take it here, and then if people get hurt, we're gonna move again until no one gets hurt.
so it's funny, he kind of joked about that before we moved in, and then I had my own experiences. Like,
Who knows? It could have been. Who knows what it was?
yeah, but I don't know. I've never had any ghost experiences since then, so I do think, I don't know.
Yeah, it might be tied more to like places. So kind of related to what you just said about land, that's a good place to start kind of talking about Atchison, because like we said before, we've been sitting on this particular story for a while, so we've kind of got a lot gathered in our heads and our 17 pages of notes. I guess 19 technically, if you add my measly contribution. No. But Atchison itself is a very interesting place for just paranormal activity. It's, what is it, the most haunted town in Kansas?
In Kansas, and possibly the U.S.
I wouldn't be surprised, because just the amount of stories and the city itself. And side note, I completely made up this word or this phrase, but it's kind of got like the paranormal, and I have like the air quotes going. It's got the paranormal trifecta, where it's kind of situated in this perfect situation that, by a lot of paranormal theories, creates paranormal activities. It's
a perfect storm.
A perfect storm for the spookies.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got it's got a bunch of limestone, because Kansas and Missouri are just basically, apparently, just all limestone. Mm-hmm. It's got rivers, and it's got train tracks. And I'll kind of explain why those are important a little bit more. A lot of people have different theories on why Atchison might be so haunted, kind of going back to what I just mentioned. And then there's also, everybody kind of likes to jump on the, maybe it was a Native American burial ground bandwagon, because that's pretty much the United States' favorite scapegoat for anything bad. I think from when what research we did, it seemed very unlikely that was kind of any significant factor.
Right.
In, like, obviously there is plenty of Native American history in the area, but very unlikely that's what's contributed to all of the activity in the town. So going back to those other things I mentioned, the paranormal trifecta, the reason why some of these things are so important, I'm sure anybody who listening to this podcast probably has heard about, the importance of limestone with the paranormal, and how, is it called the stone tape theory?
Yes. How
limestone is thought to record activity and sort of be a big cause in residual hauntings, and sort of somehow the limestone absorbs energy and then replays it over time. And there's absolutely no reason why that would happen.
No scientific evidence, but it is a very, like you said,
it sounds super cool.
It's a popular theory in the paranormal world.
I do like the theory. It's really fun.
And it helps play into the trifecta.
It does. And my whole trifecta is like a moot point without it, so I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
I mean, I like it.
We don't know for sure.
I don't. I mean, I'm all aboard the limestone train, even if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of trains. So, train track and river thing kind of plays into sort of like a, I guess you could say transient nature, or transient idea of what ghosts and hauntings might be, whereas maybe like energy doesn't necessarily live somewhere, but it might travel. Mm-hmm. And whether that energy is a particular spirit or just whatever is needed to help that spirit manifest is kind of undecided. But being so close to a river, because water can help
conduct energy and power,
and Atchison is very close to, is it the Missouri River that it's right on?
Yeah, it overlooks the Missouri River.
Yeah, so
sits up on bluffs.
And the Missouri River is like super crazy and scary and very fast. So, I mean, in theory, maybe it conducts energy faster. I don't know. But that's sort of part of the idea of why Atchison might be more active, is it's just got so many things moving through it at all times that the energy doesn't stay very stagnant. It's got new energy moving through, and whether that just makes things come by more often, whether the ghosts are visiting or whether they all live there already,
are attracted to the power of the muddy Missouri River. Big Muddy.
Yeah. That does not sound attractive.
Well, that's its nickname.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Well, the Missouri River, it is very brown. It's is not pretty.
Gross river.
But I think it's because it's so powerful, so it's pulling, and it's the longest river in the U.S. It's not the widest. I think that's the Mississippi, which is also in Missouri. but Missouri's the longest, and so it's just pulling energy from all over.
Kayla's here for actual knowledge.
No.
I just pretend I know things. And
I also grew up here,
that's
born and raised.
True.
So
yeah. I think this is a side note, but every time I see the Missouri River, I think of that one scene in the new, I don't know if it's the newest War of the Worlds anymore, but the Tom Cruise War of the Worlds, where the bodies are all slowly floating down a river.
do you know that happened? There was a huge flood in this area.
Of course you know it.
In 1993, the big flood, like it like Parkville was underwater.
Yes.
I mean, you can even see they still have, I think, the lines on walls.
That's
where.
very...
But the problem is, so like a lot of cemeteries were underwater, and so then coffins were just floating away. So it's funny you said that because that is true.
The limestone, man, it had the residual energy of that moment, and I just saw it.
Yeah.
And I just thought that I was thinking of a movie, when actually...
Maybe you were watching a news report.
Maybe, and I just remembered. Of course you knew that. Of course that's your fun fact.
That is my fun fact.
The coffin's floating down the river.
Yeah, thanks to the 93 flood of the Missouri River.
That's the year I was born.
Oh.
When were you born?
Well, just a few years before, just a few. 88. So Missouri has the second largest number of caves after Kentucky.
Yeah.
And so with caves, you also have all this water, like springs flowing under the state of Missouri. There's actually over 1,000 springs under Missouri. And 11 of those springs discharge over 50 million gallons of water every day. So that's just, you've also got like the Missouri and Mississippi rivers, which are very powerful on either side of the state. And then you've got all this underground water that's very powerful too.
So it's like basically just a bunch of ghost juice.
Yeah.
Underground ghost juice.
Yes. And that's why, I mean, kind of tying back to why we want to do this podcast, like I feel like, you know, Missouri is a flyover state, and, you know, there's a lot of ghost stories on the East Coast and the West Coast, but, like, there's a lot of paranormal happening in the Midwest as well. We're not.
There is.
So we want to tell you about it.
Yeah, like, I actually, like, Missouri's decent for a state. And I'm from California, so it's kind of like, it was kind of major whiplash moving here, and you've lived in California, too. But it's a cool, like, Kansas City especially is a really cool little town, and...
There's a lot of history here.
Mm-hmm. And... I mean, I feel just honored to be so close to Sallie. Hopefully not any closer than I technically am geographically, because I'm still worried.
You were in her house.
I know.
For an hour.
I know.
Broad daylight.
And I'm concerned that she didn't stay there, but...
I'm not sure she was there when we were there, but... We'll talk about that more.
We'll talk about that more.
So as you were saying, Emily, with like, I don't know, with the river, the Missouri River, so Atchison sits on... I guess, let me start over.
Okay. I know, once we get into the meat of it, I'm like, oh my god, so much information.
So much information. So going back to how you said that Atchison has kind of the trifecta. It's got the water, it's got the limestone, it's got the train tracks. So kind of tying into that, I thought maybe I should just talk quickly about the history of Atchison.
Are you sure?
Quickly. We'll see what quickly translates to.
All right.
I do want to do a future episode on Atchison where I can really dive into my 17 pages of notes on its interesting history, but I'll just give a quote brief.
Maybe we should
overlap.
like do just a video PowerPoint where like you're literally, it's a recording of you.
Yes.
And then we've got it on a projector screen, and you've got the little like pointy stick thing.
I have
and
all my
just
notes.
pointing.
That
and I don't have to be there. I'm kidding. I'd be there. I just would be doing something else.
You could, run the PowerPoint. I'll tell you next.
Yes.
Next.
Yes, that'll be... We're going to have an entire YouTube channel of PowerPoint presentations.
We're going to make it big.
Yeah, we don't want anybody to like us.
But I'm going to paint the picture of Atchison.
Okay, paint it.
Paint it. I think it's probably one of the most picturesque cities in Kansas. Maybe because it's on the border of Missouri, but it's, it sits up on the bluffs overlooking the Missouri River, and it's just surrounded by trees and rich farmland. The city itself has, brick streets and gorgeous Victorian homes, which kind of showcase Atchison's once wealthy past when, you know, the riverboats were bringing in merchants, and then later the railroads were bringing in businesses and industry. So, and by no means is Atchison a dying town. It's still a thriving small town, but there was a time when it was really vibrant. And like a lot of towns, I guess, are that way. So Atchison does have, you know, because railroad was a big industry, so it's got the railroad, blah, blah, blah. It's on the Missouri River, blah, blah, blah. It's sitting on limestone. Those are just the tangible elements, but you also got some, like, intangible energy in the history and culture of Atchison I want to touch on really quick. But you kind of brought up that there are Native Americans in this area. It was the Kansas Indians. Mm-hmm. And their village was actually noted by Lewis and Clark when they explored the area, when they came through on July 4th, 1804. Fun fact, that was the first Independence Day celebrated in the American West. July 4th, 1804.
Fun fact. That is a good fun fact.
Yeah, so Atchison can claim that, you know, the first 4th of July in the American West was celebrated there.
That might be a good thing to remember for trivia.
Yes. So you're welcome, world. Just even so with Lewis and Clark, they came in 1804, but even the years prior to that, you know, the Native Americans were traveling up and down the river. The French fur traders coming up from Louisiana were traveling up and down the river. And then the pioneers were coming west. There was just a lot of traffic. And who's to say that there's, like you said earlier, that the ghosts aren't still traveling all along that river, just like the past people were. You know, in Atchison, too, which I want to dive more into in the future, but it was very back and forth on anti-slavery and pro-slavery. Yeah. So, I don't know, you just think about, does that conflict leave a lasting impression on the area too, that it was very, I mean, that's a heavy topic, and it's just the city, you know, went back and forth. It actually was founded on pro-slavery because they wanted, when Kansas, the state was formed, we want a pro-slavery city. Right. But then some anti-slavery people came in and took over the town, which is good. But there was just that power struggle there, and I feel like that just leaves an impression.
And that was just so prevalent just between Missouri and Kansas in general that, like you said, if that left kind of a mark, like if energy from past events is recorded, then maybe that's why there are so many haunted places around here, just because there were so many strong emotions just kind of gathered in one spot.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of that is known, because I think when we think of the Civil War, we think of the South and the East Coast and the Northeast, but a lot of historians actually think the Civil War started 7 years prior along the Kansas and Missouri border, because they called it the Border Wars. And it was bloody. I mean, some of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War were actually fought along the Kansas and Missouri border. It was bad. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like why Jesse James, he got involved because of just, I mean, we'll touch on that later, but that just,
it all ties together.
It all ties together and just shows that, you know, there's just a lot of history here, and it's like, what does that kind of literal bloody conflict leave on an area?
Yeah, there are a lot of like little battlefield markers all around Kansas and Missouri. To see them randomly, just that, and like cemeteries. There's so many cemeteries in the Midwest. This is the weirdest thing. Just like, I'm used to big block cemeteries that are very sections apart, but in Missouri it's like
little ones here.
There's like one between like a Red Lobster and an Olive Garden, and it's the weirdest thing.
I know. Which actually, maybe that started because I grew up until I was 14. We lived super close to there, and I just always was like, I want to see it.
No, I want to see those dead people. Hope they're kids.
Because it literally is in between like a Red Lobster and an Olive Garden. It's so random.
I just look at it and I'm like, that's normal, I guess. I don't know.
I think it just like ties back to there's probably just all these small family, plot cemeteries.
Yeah, I guess at least they didn't move it, I guess. But it's kind of weird to see when you're eating your Cheddar Bay biscuits.
Yeah, it is. But that's not in Atchison. That's in Kansas City.
That's not. I am on point.
But yeah, so I just think, going back to Atchison, I just think between the tangible and intangible stuff, I think there's a reason it's so haunted, and that kind of leads us into its most famous haunted story, the Sallie House. And I think it's important really quick to just touch on the history of the Sallie House. I personally, I don't think that's necessarily related to what's happening there, but I think it's important to note it. Did you want to talk about the Sallie House legend first, the famous story? Or...
Yeah. Okay, so the Sallie House legend. Right.
Or I can...
No, I can do it. So there are a few stories about, why the Sallie House is haunted and why, in particular, it's by maybe a ghost called Sally. And the most popular theory is that there was a doctor who lived in the home and he performed a botched, what was it? Whoa, that word's going to be hard.
Appendicitis, but so what's the surgery?
Appendectomy? Appendectomy.
Woo, big words.
Anyways, he killed a little girl. With the
well, he didn't intend to, but it was a botched... Yeah.
Right, okay. I jumped the accusation. I just, really bonded with the not ghost when I was there. Yeah. Anyways, so that's the most popular theory, was that this little girl came in sick and the surgery did not go well, and then she died on the table, and her spirit kind of remains. And it being a little girl who had the surgery done by a man kind of plays into some other theories about, for example, the spirit is known to be more aggressive towards men, and they believe that kind of ties into how she wasn't purposely killed by a man. It was an accident with the surgery that went poorly, but they all sort of tie together. But that's really the only thing that really seems to connect. Yes, the spirit people see is a little girl who, in theory, is wearing clothing that matches the time period that this alleged Sally died. But just that and the sort of distaste towards men is the only thing that really kind of fits that narrative, really. But that's the main legend surrounding
that you're
the house.
Gonna see. I mean, I think even on maybe the Atchison visitor website, that's the story they tell.
That's the most, even at the house, they have a little doctor's bag set up on a table. Which
it was for a time. It was a doctor's office, but there's no evidence of the story being true.
Right.
There's actually no evidence really even of a Sally living in the house. It was first attributed by a medium in the 90s. Mm-hmm. Felt the presence of a girl named Sally. But
which, did she come after the Pickmans thing, or was that sort of
during the Pickmans?
During would make sense. Because, I remember, because they were trying to figure out what was going on, because something was happening, so they brought someone in to help investigate it, and that's where it all came about.
Right.
But
it's not to say the story's not true, but there's just no historical evidence to back it up.
It's definitely, I feel like it's very common with any ghost story where there's the most popular story, and then there's kind of all the theories surrounding it, and whether, is the story true? Is it not? I've definitely heard, mixed things about whether or not that story seems plausible. But that is the most commonly accepted one.
Yeah.
As to where this Sally came from.
Yep. Getting boring here for a few minutes. My specialty.
No.
I'm just going to quickly talk about the house and, the people that built it and leading up to, I guess, the infamous Pickmans living in there in the 90s. But, so the Sallie House, it's a nice 2-story, 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath home with a standard creepy old basement.
Oh, God, that basement is terrifying. We didn't even get to go down there.
So many old homes have creepy basements.
I don't know. That one had it had a vibe.
It did.
I didn't like it. It was a bad vibe.
But the house that's at 508 North 2nd Street in Atchison.
You weren't even looking at your notes when you said that. You just knew.
I just knew. Well, I said we've been researching this episode for so long.
We have been. It's just the retention is impressive.
Impressive. I thought I was going to have the one with weird accents.
I just wanted to be Sean Connery for a second. I'll stop.
Yeah, let me get back to my boring history.
Sorry.
Such as, the lot was purchased in 1866 by Michael C. Finney. He was a first-generation Irish immigrant. The house took around 5 years to build, and there's kind of a rumor that the family lived in the basement while it was being finished. I don't know why that's of note, but sure.
That's terrifying.
So the home was then completed in 1871, and Michael C. Finney, the patriarch, lived there with his wife, Kate, and they had 5 children, but only 3 survived to adulthood, and those children were James K. Finney, Agnes, and Charles C. Finney. Then, so it's kind of sad because Michael C. Finney, the patriarch, he only lived in the house, the completed house, for a year. He died in 1872 in the home at 10 p.m., but presumably of natural causes. But it is interesting to note he did die in the home. And then just
living in the basement that whole time.
Yeah,
he just gets to go upstairs for a year and then he dies.
I know. So maybe that is kind of tragic.
Yeah, he's
you
still
spend
there.
All your blood and I mean, he came over from Ireland. You know, I'm buying this land. I'm going to build a home. Live the American dream.
He is 100% still there despite just like, no, I spent all this time building this damn house. I'm enjoying it.
So, yeah, maybe. But I think, well, I think that there is some truth to that. I could get it.
I'd do it.
But he also, segueing, he also bought the little plot of land next to the Sallie House, which I didn't realize this until I was doing my research. So he built a home, 508 or 2nd Street, and then he also owned the land next to it. And in 1879... So what is that? 7 years after he died, his oldest son, James, built a home for their mother on that plot of land, which is 504 North 2nd Street. And then, I don't know why, but she then later deeded that home to another woman who then deeded that home to another family. But it did come back to the mother, Kate, in 1906. And then she lived there. So that's the house next door. So going back to the Sallie House, so after the father died, Charles C. Finney, which was the second son, he was actually practiced medicine out of the home. So that's where, if the story of the botched appendicitis removal is true, it's probably Charles C. Finney.
Right.
Is the murderer. Is the most makes the most sense to apply it to him. But so he lived there until 1905. He got married the year before, and then he built a home on the other side of the Sallie House and moved in with his wife. And then Agnes, the daughter, lived in the Sallie House with her husband, William True. She moved back in 1906 when Charles moved out. So basically, that's just a lot of information you don't really need to remember, but basically the family stayed in or next door to the Sallie House since they built it or finished building it in 1871. So Agnes then was living in the Sallie House, like I said, with her husband William until he passed away in 1918, and she continued living there until she passed away in 1939. So from 1918 to 1939, she actually ran the house as a boarder house because she was a widow and needed income. Right. So that also could apply to, that means you're going to have a lot of transient people and just traffic in and out of the home.
That definitely seems to be a theme with that house where, like, it's never just like a single stable, like, family unit. It's people come in and out a lot, because I know, like, up until now, obviously, it had a history as, like, a rental property.
Mm-hmm.
But
so it kind of did starting in 1918 in a way. So,
yeah, which is interesting.
So Agnes passed away in 1939 in the home, but she had been ill. So again, just a natural death, but it is a death in the home specifically. So then from 1939 to 1958, it just passed through a bunch of hands, just different tenants living, in and out. And it's hard to say, is that just typical rental history that people come and go? Or is that, I don't know, something happened and you didn't really talk about ghosts back then, so you're like, nah, we're just going to move. Weird shit's happening. We're just going to move.
I don't know.
But from 1958 to 1990 was like the next longest tenant. Ethel Anderson lived there. And she didn't really report any weird activity. So either she just ignored it, or maybe because she was a female, I don't know, maybe it was quiet. Maybe the home was quiet for her.
And that definitely seems to be a theme, but also just like the name Ethel gives me like just an image of somebody that would ignore just like random crap happening around them. Just like, meh.
I mean, it is easy to brush off a lot of that, like electrical, like the lights flickering. I mean, it's an old home. You just be like, I don't know, it's just bad electrical.
And if you don't feed into the activity, sometimes you can't feed it enough energy to continue. Mm-hmm. So maybe Ethel just did not have any time for that nonsense, and she happily rented the house for quite some time.
Yeah, from 1958 to 1990. So what is that, like 32 years?
that's significant.
Yeah, so...
Or maybe Ethel did it all.
It's true. Maybe it's Ethel still.
Ethel's the one.
Yeah.
So damn you, Ethel.
So there was a family in between Ethel living there and then the Pickmans moving in. So they moved in on December 31st, 1992, and they were pregnant, about ready to have their first child. And that's kind of where the Sallie House becomes famous, is with Tony and Deborah Pickman living there. Because prior to that, like I said, no one really reported activity. It's not to say it wasn't haunted, but it was probably minimal, or, I don't know, maybe people just didn't talk about that stuff back then. But it definitely, I mean, it escalated when the Pickmans moved in, for sure.
The Pickmans' story, it reads very much like a really stereotypical, like, ghost story. Like, I feel like it fits every classical ghost movie you could think of. They move in, they just had their son, I believe. So I think everything started pretty okay, pretty normal.
Yeah, I think they had like electrical stuff, like I said, and because I think they like contacted their landlord and were like, hey, maybe you should have an electrician come out, and he was like, it's fine.
Which I think the first time they were kind of alerted to things being super abnormal was their neighbor asked them why they left their son's light on in his nursery on like all night long. And Deborah denied having done that because, like, obviously that doesn't make any sense. But the light, you know, according to what they said, had been left on, and their son kept waking up kind of as if somebody were trying to play with him. Which,
woke up, like, startled, or? Yeah,
startled, and I don't know if it was, like, kind of... Because there's a difference with a kid. Like, if they wake up upset, like, that's very obvious. But if they wake up specifically having been described as, like, if somebody was trying to play with them, I'm imagining, like, laughing and actually, like... Because my son's done that before, where he kind of will just look at nothing and then just start laughing. And it's terrifying. Like, you're just like, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? And a lot of people say that kids can kind of pick up on the paranormal more than...
They're not closed off to it like we are.
Yeah, so, like, maybe their son was seeing something legitimately that was there. Mm-hmm. But either way, a lot of the activity kind of did focus on the nursery. Like, they came in at one point... And I think this is when stuff started getting fairly serious for them, but they came in and all of their son's stuffed animals had formed this, like, cult circle in the middle of the bedroom.
I do know that story.
Yeah.
They had been away and they came home and there was teddy bears in a circle.
Yes.
Like, hands touching.
Yeah, like...
Very creepy.
Like, maybe the teddy bears were the ones that did it. I wouldn't be surprised if there was, like, a Furby in the circle, but I don't think they were invented yet, because it was, like, 1993, I think.
Yeah.
But... If there had been Furbies, it would have been part of the cult. But there was that, and there was, like, spontaneous fire starting in the home, which is almost more like a poltergeist, kind of. Like, some of the activity seems very poltergeisty initially. But there's, like, some of the toys, I think, would spontaneously catch fire and be thrown across the home, and things like that. Just, it progressively got worse, and
he and Tony had a lot of scratches.
Yes, and some of the scratches kind of play into something I'll talk about a little bit later with the second theory that I think is the one we both favor about what might be happening. It's definitely the one I lean towards. But yeah, he was getting scratched, and there was also, and this again kind of fits a very archetypal theme with hauntings, where the wife felt very comfortable in the home and, like, very at ease and wanted to be there, and the husband would gradually grow more aggravated and kind of aggressive and distant. And Tony was actually having very violent thoughts towards Deborah, nearing kind of when things were getting very bad for them. And I think that's part of the reason they ended up just leaving the house entirely, was he was legitimately having thoughts that he wanted to hurt her or kill her. And I think he actually saw Sallie, whatever was presenting itself as Sallie, which he did see initially as a little girl, but he did mention later that things started to change and she started to become more not a little girl and taking on a form that doesn't make sense for some sort of, like, human entity. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of the very basic, like, ghost story element of it, but it does kind of tip into something a little bit more insidious, which I think is more interesting, possibly.
Yes.
I don't know. Is there anything I missed? I can't remember.
No, I mean, I think you touched on the big things with what happened to the Pickmans. I mean, there's plenty of I mean, I think Deborah wrote a book. I mean, if you really want to dive into it, you can really get their full story of what they experienced. And I believe they still, to this day, have experiences. I mean, they still live in Atchison, so not, it's a small town, so they're not terribly far. Nowhere is terribly far from the Sallie House, but I think they still have stuff happen to them today.
And they've been very open about it. And they're
yeah.
still, because I think Deborah still like maintains a website where she's constantly updating it. Like they've been very open about their experience, and I think it's interesting that they haven't had any like yes, they're on a bunch of paranormal shows and all that, but they haven't turned it into like a full-on movie or anything like that, which seems to happen with a lot of the stories that have kind of been proven to be hoaxes of some sort, which makes this one I think a little more compelling. Is it seems like they genuinely just want to communicate the actual events and not play it up very much.
Yep. I think that's why she kind of started a website and wrote a book too, to like just be like, this is what really happened, and kind of disclaim some of the crazy rumors that get told about what they experienced.
So before I go into like our theory, not our theory, but the theory we prefer about kind of what's happening and what seems more plausible with just some of the stories, I think we heard some, and I don't know if it's when we went to the visitor center, I think the woman working there kind of suggests that there might not be a single ghost living there, but like, again, going back to the transient topic, that maybe ghosts kind of stop by. Like, I think you mentioned a portal. Like, maybe there's a portal there that pulls these ghosts in, and
they kind of come and go.
Yeah.
Because I think it also explains, like, so that's, I mean, like, sometimes people have a lot of stuff happen to them at the Sallie House, and sometimes nothing happens.
Right.
Or sometimes it's benevolent, or sometimes it's evil. So it's like when you have all these different types of activity or non-activity, you're like, what's going on here?
Yeah. Like it seems unlikely that it's the same entity, or maybe it's something that is extremely intelligent in particular. It's hard to kind of say, but there is the theory that it's a ghost called Sallie, or there is the theory that it's many ghosts that do not all stay. It might just be basically a revolving door of spirits, which is a very interesting concept. But the more popular idea of what's going on is that there's not a ghost or any sort of human entity haunting it, but it's something more preternatural, like a demon, which fits going back to what we were starting to talk about with Tony Pickman getting scratched. He received scratches, particularly like in groups of 3. It's just like 3 claw marks every time, and the number 3 is significant because it's believed to be a mockery of the Holy Trinity. Usually when you hear stories dealing with a demon, they'll do things in 3s, which is why 3 a.m. is considered the witching hour, and why if you're trying to communicate with a spirit and you hear 3 knocks, you might not be dealing with something you want to be dealing with. So be afraid of the number 3 is what I'm saying.
Well, and I forgot to mention, too, so the tenant after the Pickmans, I don't know if they were directly after the Pickmans, but she lived there and drew a pentagram in the basement, which then the landlord painted over, but you can definitely see where it was.
And he's definitely, like, it happened. He's kind of downplayed how dramatic the pentagram situation was. Like, there wasn't, like, I don't think there was any, like, sacrifices or anything like that.
No, and there wasn't, like, I don't think there... Because he actually didn't even kick her out for that. He said he kicked her out just because she was kind of just not taking care of the house in general. But he also was like, what the hell is this in the basement?
Right, and the pentagram, like, it definitely happened, and that was before the house had its reputation for what it was, so that...
I mean, locally, I guess it's possible people knew what the Pickmans were going through, so she might have been trying to attract something, but still, it happened very quickly after they moved out.
And it's a very popular theory that there is a portal in the basement. And it's not just like any portal, but like just legitimately a portal to hell, which is casual, but but that is one of like many reasons why a demon is kind of associated with the activity in the home. But in addition to like the 3 scratches and all of that, the house kind of does fit a lot of like archetypal demon infestation tropes, we'll say. Again, with me liking movies so much, I'll reference another movie. If we talk about like Paranormal Activity, it follows very much like the build-up process in a demon story, which happens in the Sallie House, where it's believed that demons kind of feed off the energy of whoever they're attempting to infest. So they kind of need to play off of a person's emotions and fears and gradually get them to the point where they're so weak that they can take over to the point that they needed, which was happening with the Pickmans, where they were getting to the point where Tony was afraid he was actually going to hurt Deborah, which is usually how a lot of these things go. And it's just an interesting thing to consider, because I don't think that's necessarily how typical hauntings go.
No.
It's not like an escalation to the point where it got with them. Another thing that's kind of stereotypical, I guess, with demons is they try to present themselves as something unassuming, and it's very common. And I think Sallie House is a big kind of reason why this might be a main idea, but a lot of times people believe that demons will present themselves as like a children or somebody who's weak or elderly or just something that would put someone at ease. So
benevolent.
Yeah. I mean, let's think about like, I don't know, like Annabelle. Like you've got something inhabiting a doll. And it's not very scary if whatever you're dealing with is coming through a little Raggedy Ann, but it ends up being something very malevolent. And that's kind of one of the theories with there not being like any specific historic evidence of somebody named Sally that fit the description of what was seen as Sally. That is where the kind of belief that maybe it's something just playing the part of a little girl named Sally comes into play.
Yeah, because, I mean, this is a very famous house, and we're probably the 1,000th person to talk about it.
Yes.
And, like, in all the research, there's not been a Sally they can tie to even to the city of Atchison as a whole. No. Sure, there's been some people named Sally, and even spelled Sallie, but, like, just nothing that fits the bill. So that's where it does fit. Is it someone pretending to be this Sally little girl to trick people?
Yeah, and I think we talked about this a little bit, that women in particular usually feel fairly drawn to the house, and they kind of feel more at it more easily, whereas men, they get more aggressive while they're there, and they also tend to experience more kind of violent paranormal activity, very similar to like Tony getting his scratches and everything.
Yeah, I don't think any of that happened to Deborah. Like,
she had experiences, but
sure, but nothing like actually like on her.
And I think it took her longer to actually like accept what was happening too, if I recall correctly. And
I think she even talked about how that was unlike her to not like jump on defending Tony. Like, she thinks like the ghost affected her in a way, like made her like brush him off, which she's like was very unlike her.
Right.
To brush off what he was going through. Yeah,
and like a lot of like anything and any person we talk to regarding the Sallie House, they almost make the house itself seem like an entity, where it's almost like kind of like a Venus flytrap, where it like draws people in, and then once they're there, it kind of works on dividing and conquering them. Like it split them to weaken them and kind of get them to the point where it could do whatever it was gonna do, whatever demon-y stuff it had in mind, or ghosty stuff. But I mean, even when we were there, we felt pretty at ease.
Yeah. I guess we can kind of segue in if you wanted into our experience there.
Yeah, I think I was kind of trying to, I think that's kind of where we're at. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, when we first walked in, we felt very, what's the word? It just felt really heavy when we first entered, and just like, I was like on edge.
Yeah, and I definitely, and it might just be the way the tours are set up, but I definitely felt like I was trespassing.
Right, and so that's why I don't know, like, how much of that was the house making us feel that way, or did we just feel weird because we were entering a home by ourselves without what we had never been in before.
Yeah, and knowing everything we knew. Like, there were so many things that could contribute to it feeling so uncomfortable. Right. But it definitely does feel like something's watching you when you're there.
Oh, yeah.
Which was not pleasant.
No. But I will say that the longer we were there, the more at ease we felt, which, I don't know, was that just us getting comfortable, or was that something manipulating our feelings?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, we were even joking when we were there, like, maybe we need to come back with a guy and just see, like, what happens. Like, is it legitimately, like, does it not target women in the same way? And does that, like, lead back to maybe it is actually the spirit of a little girl and she's just more comfortable with women?
Right. Or you had brought up when we were at the house, is it like the Amityville story where, like, the entity wants women to feel comfortable and not leave and feel at peace there.
Yeah, because, like, in theory, from everything that we've researched and heard, like, demons need people to stay long enough for them to feed off of them. And nobody's staying in that house longer than maybe a night.
Right.
So it shouldn't have energy to actually be as strong as it was when the Pickmans were living there.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that is, it just wants people to feel like they're comfortable and at ease long enough to not leave immediately. Because it's just getting everybody there in, like, hour-long bursts. And it's just like, what the hell?
Yeah, it could actually kind of piss it off, too.
I know, it's like, come on, just stay!
Yeah, because for those of you who don't know, like, no one lives in the house currently. Yeah. It's just, you can book it during the week for, like, 1-hour tours. And I think on the weekends, you can book it overnight. Yes. But no one actually currently lives there. So that's also, I mean, it just goes back to, it's very transient again, you know, like a lot of people coming and going.
Yeah.
And a lot of personalities coming and going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully whatever's actually living there stays there. Because that's my concern, is that it doesn't. But just hope that it's just anchored.
Yeah. I would love to know, this is like off topic a little bit, but like, do the houses on either side and in the area have activity too? No one ever talks about it. And I'm not going to like go knock on their door and be like, do you got ghost activity? But I'm curious. The houses are pretty close together. It's not like it's sitting off on its own up on a hill. It's all on not a busy street, but a residential street full of houses.
That entire street is like, every house on that street looks completely different from the architecture is all bizarre. Yeah. And there's legitimately like a mansion across the street from the Sallie House.
Like the Glick meet.
It looks so creepy. Like, it's the most thematic.
It's very gothic looking.
It is. Like, if there's gonna be a demon, it picked the right town. Because it's like, it's good. Like, it picked the right vibes for a haunting. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think I've heard mention of the houses next door experiencing some things, but I don't think it's to anywhere near the extent of the Sallie House.
Which I guess I could go into, if it is a portal, how big is a portal? Is it like a doorway size, or is it a
port key, like
a sinkhole size?
Yeah, I mean, there's that little hole in the basement that Zach was trying to climb into. So maybe that, and as if that was a fairly small space, so that wouldn't affect neighbors too much, I don't think.
Exactly. So
hopefully,
yeah, but yeah, we did, which might tie into some other theories you have. I would say we probably felt, aside from when we first entered the home and felt kind of weird, we did feel off in the master bedroom. Yes. Like, I almost had to leave the room. I felt so lightheaded and dizzy.
I did too. So that's actually like a very common experience in the Sallie House, where people, they get like this really intense sense of vertigo, basically, where there is like nausea, dizziness, and definitely a feeling of being watched. Like, all of those, and we were reading, there's a guest book that they kind of keep running in the Sallie House, and they have to replace it frequently because so many people go. But we were reading, and basically everybody at least commented on that. And we felt it, like you said, particularly in the master bedroom, which brings me to a point that I found very interesting there, was the house is just like very bizarrely built. Yeah. Like, it has almost every possible ceiling height you could imagine. And everything is almost like slanted at a different angle. It's just, nothing is consistent.
Yeah, it's not just a box home.
No,
especially weird. The master bedroom has very slanted ceilings, and there's like the dormer, is that what you call it, where the window
I don't know,
comes in, and I felt like the floor was uneven.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like whoever built the house just asked themselves, like, how can I make this as uncomfortable as possible to walk through? And then they did that. Like, it's the opposite. Like, it's
there's
terrible.
A lot of nooks and crannies.
It's it's a cute house, but like, it's also just extremely disorienting. Yeah. So we were talking about that a little bit. I don't remember if it was that day that I looked it up, but there is actually sort of I don't know if it's necessarily a paranormal theory or if it's sort of an explanation for paranormal experiences, where basically there's something called a funhouse effect, where if floors or ceilings are just slightly offset from each other, or if the angle is just a little bit out of the ordinary, it can create this feeling of disorientation, which can lead to nausea, dizziness, and a feeling that you're being watched, because basically your brain's telling you that something isn't quite right, and it's trying to adjust to that, which just causes these feelings of unease. And that's 100% what we were feeling.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like that in particular explains the very minor common things people experience in the Sallie House. By no means do I think it explains everything. I think
it is truly haunted.
I do too.
But I do think some of it, honestly, I don't think we had an experience when we were there. I think we were just, between our pre-knowledge of the place and then, like you said, just the disorienting of the walls and windows and doors being funky.
Yeah, the house is just, it's a really nice house, and it's very, very strange.
Yes.
And yeah, I do think there's something there, but I think what we felt was not it.
Yeah. We came when the ghosts were on vacation.
Yeah, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, it's probably for the best. Although I will say that night, I had trouble sleeping. I think I had post anxiety, like, oh my God, what if I brought a demon home with me?
Yeah,
or something followed me home.
I felt guilty.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what did I just do? Just for fun? I just went and messed with a demon? Like, what if I brought it home? Like, why did I even do this? And it didn't help because I don't know if it was that night or just that
I think it was
week.
that night, that day.
That BuzzFeed Unsolved released their episode, their, final episode going to the Sallie House. And they had so much shit happen in the nursery that we'd just been chilling.
We chilled, in there for quite a while, just hanging out on the floor.
We were talking to the dolls. I mean, it's a nice room. There are a bunch of windows, so there's a bunch of just nice natural light.
Yeah, it's a very bright home. Yeah. It's not, it's creepy in the sense of, a lot of old homes are, but it's a very well-lit home. You don't feel...
It shouldn't be creepy.
Right.
But it is. And I don't know if it's the funhouse effect thing, or if there's just... I don't know.
All the above.
So many things. It's just you can't know all the things you know about a place and all the stories and not be just a little bit scared of it. Or a lot of it.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
It's the town, the Ashton itself has a trifecta to attract ghosts, and maybe there's a trifecta at the Sallie House too. You've got just the funhouse effect, plus the actual ghosts, plus people's own feelings.
I definitely feel like the house itself is very much a character, and the houses across from it are strange too. I know there's just so many strange architectural choices in Atchison that the town just feels like it has a very strong character.
When we were walking around the town, we were like, why isn't this used as a filming location? Because it's just it's got a vibe. You guys will just have to go visit yourself someday.
And the university we went to there, is it Benedictine College?
Yes.
That place, that is straight out of an exorcism movie. It's super cool. I saw a monk for the first time ever, and I was very excited.
Yeah, I would love... Well, we want to go back to Atchison for sure, because there's so many stories to tell. But yeah, Benedictine College is one of those. And I think they are... Catholics were tight-lipped about, giving out ghost stories, but...
They're like, absolutely, there is not a demon next door.
Although, we will perform an exorcism if needed.
Yeah, that would be really bad for their image, just having one of the most popular demon houses ever in their town. I hope they don't have a resident exorcist, because, my God.
I don't know how common it is to be an exorcist.
I like to believe it's very common.
But, I do think it's fascinating that Catholicism is the only Christian, what do you call it? Just section of Christianity that...
I can't think of what that's called either.
That, sect.
Flavor.
Yeah, flavor. That has exorcists. At least I think. I don't think any of the others do. At least not as popular.
Not as prevalent.
Prevalent, that's the word, not popular.
Yeah. So maybe you shouldn't do the exorcism?
Well, I'm not going to do the exorcism. I'm not licensed.
We were going with because you could speak Latin. I was under the impression...
I could just understand what they're saying.
So you can just translate for the demon when it's telling us what it's gonna kill us or whatever.
Yeah. So that segue was just... That was a side tangent, for sure.
I think we avoided more side tangents than I expected.
Yeah.
But I haven't listened through yet, and I can't even see we've recorded quite a bit, so I might be wrong.
We might have some side tangents. We hope you've enjoyed our side tangents, if we decide to leave them in.
Yeah,
but
we'll see which ones make the cut.
Yeah. I don't know, do you want to wrap up on, your thoughts on the Sallie House?
Yeah. So I guess I'd say that the house it definitely left a lasting impression on me, even though nothing really happened while we were there. And maybe it's just because, like we said, I know all the stories and I'm easily spooked. But I'm not so sure. Even when I was writing down my notes for this episode, sitting in my apartment, facing windows with sunlight just glaring into my face, like I was super creeped out. Like I had to keep looking over my shoulder because I don't know what I expected, but I guess I just think that the Sallie House demon is incredibly nosy. I don't know. But I was just kind of like worried that I'd have a sort of haunted mansion hitchhiking ghost situation that maybe just came back to bite me just randomly. But I think the safest thing to say about that house is that there is something there, and it's not and it's not something you want to like mess with, whatever it is, like ghost, demon, just let it do its thing. I mean, the house to me felt very assessing, like when you walk in there, something's scrutinizing you. And again, the woman we talked to at the visitor center in Atchison kind of said something like that people go in and the ghost seems to kind of scrutinize and consider them for a while, and then whatever decision it comes to kind of dictates what their experience is going to be like. Yeah. And that concept just really freaks me out. Yeah. So that's what I think about that house.
Well, I guess related to that is like, is the Sallie House an intelligent being that is assessing, do I want to mess with this person or not? Or is it ghosts coming and going? And that's why sometimes people experience evil things. Sometimes it's benevolent activity. Sometimes it's no activity. Sometimes it's a ton of activity, you know? So I guess I lean towards the camp of, I think it's a portal and ghosts are coming and going. And maybe there is some kind of a demon or even just a non-terrestrial or an elemental that's just been on that land forever that is non-dimensional and it comes and goes and messes with people.
Sounds insanely cool.
Yeah.
It sounds way better than what I mumbled out. An elemental.
I mean, if you're in that camp of believing, like I've watched different mediums on shows and they sometimes bring that up, that there's stuff that we can't explain. I mean, there's a lot about ghosts we don't know, obviously, but that a lot of mediums believe that there's just stuff that's just been on this land since before humans, and it's just there and you can't do anything about it, and maybe that's what's going on at the Sallie House. Yeah. And I think in our research we did, this is kind of ties in that mediums will say that Atchison is very noisy.
Which is really unsettling to think about.
So it's like, I don't know, maybe the Sallie House is just noisy. There's people coming and going, and
it could be.
It's a train station.
It's really interesting to think about because the town itself was like very quiet and empty. But like if you think like maybe it actually isn't, like
if you could take a peek behind the veil, what would you see?
Ooh. That's kind of creepy.
It is.
But I also hope it's true because that's really fun.
So should we end on the note of picture Atchison, you creeping behind the curtain, and what else is going on that's naked to our eye 99% of the time? And we just get those little glimpses that come through when they want us to see them.
Yeah, we just think they're like 10 ghosts when in actuality there are so many ghosts. It's the battalion that's in your family house.
Yes.
Just shuffling through Atchison at all times.
Right.
Never going back. I think that's an episode.
I think that is. That's our take on the Sallie House.
Yeah.
We hope you've enjoyed our theories, and I hope there's been some new insight, since it is a story that's been told 1,000 times. But that's why we wanted to start with the Sallie House, because it is such a famous place, and it's literally 45-minute drive from where we're sitting right now. And we wanted to be able to, like, we can go there. So that's why we wanted to kick off our series with the Sallie House.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big thing for us, is trying to actually go to the places we talk about to have more of a
first-hand experience?
Yeah,
first-person experience?
Yeah. And we are going to try to do some more obscure stories and big ones as much as we can find them, but definitely going to the place and having some actual first-person encounters to relay is going to be our big thing. Like, we definitely, if possible, would like to even try to do some sort of investigation at some point.
Yes.
We attempted at the Sallie House. I think I was too scared.
Yeah, we gotta get
Yeah.
ourselves prepped, and we do that. We kind of at Belvoir Winery. We for a few minutes attempted to.
We did.
Got yelled for trespassing.
We did. Yeah, we definitely did a little bit of impromptu investigation there. That was poorly planned.
So that's the thing. We gotta plan better.
Yeah, it won't happen again in that fashion. But we're definitely all on board for actually investigating legally.
Yes, and with the right equipment.
Correct. So, if you like
Stay
us,
tuned.
yeah, we'll get equipment. But that's the episode, though.
Yeah, and
I have no idea how to sign off in an episode.
I know. How do you sign off?
Do you just awkwardly say bye for like 5 seconds?
It's like the Midwest goodbye, where
It is.
you can't hang up on someone, or you stand by the front door for 30 minutes trying to leave.
Oh my god, it's gonna be that. Yeah,
We're
all
Midwest
of our outros.
goodbying, you guys.
Yeah, all of our outros are gonna be 10 minutes long.
Of us trying to sign off.
We're just so polite that we can't say goodbye to the people that we're not actually directly talking to.
We're just gonna have to hang up on you.
Yeah, but you won't know when. I don't know when. My mouse isn't working. Bye.